Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a quick review over trigonometric identities. This is very specifically your quiz, and I told you that you need to know what was on your quiz to make sure that you do well on your test, as well as all the other trig identity problems that I have given to you in your DIYs. You may see some that you have seen before, you may see some that you haven't seen before, so make sure that you, number one, know all your trig identities that I have given you so far, and number two, you're able to solve them using a few of the common techniques that we have seen already. That being said, let's start by solving the tangent of x. Now these first six are just identities that we should already know. So the tangent of x is actually going to be sine of x over cosine of x. But I said there's two answers. It's also 1 over cotangent of x. Secant of x is 1 over cosine of x. Sine of x is 1 over cosecant of x. Cosecant times sine is basically 1 over sine times sine over 1, which once you cancel out the sines, this is just equal to 1 over 1, or just 1. Sine squared plus cosine squared is equal to just 1. And tangent squared of x plus 1 is equal to secant squared. Now the way you get this one, ladies and gentlemen, is by dividing everything here in your number 5 by cosine. So if I pretended to take sine squared divided by cosine squared, well, that just gives me tangent squared, and then cosine squared over cosine squared, that just gives me 1, and then 1 over cosine squared is equal to secant. So you see how this one is just derived from the original one. Let's go ahead and try this guy out. So what we have here is basically the trigonometric 1 minus sine squared divided by cosine squared. Well, 1 minus sine squared is actually equal to cosine squared. So this is just telling us that we have cosine squared over cosine. And if we cancel out, well, we can actually say that this is cosine of x times cosine of x divided by cosine of x. We can cancel one of these out, and what we're left with is just cosine of x. Now for number 8, we are going to turn everything into terms of sine and cosine. So what we have here is going to be sine over cosine divided by secant, which is going to be 1 over cosine minus cosecant over 1. Now, because we have a denominator of cosine here, we're going to want to go ahead and make this a denominator of cosine by multiplying by cosine over cosine. This gives us sine over cosine over 1 minus cosine squared, all divided by cosine. And if you guys know, 1 minus cosine squared is equal to sine squared. So we actually have sine over cosine divided by sine squared over cosine. We can actually multiply by the reciprocal in this case. So we are going to end up with sine over cosine times cosine over sine squared. And this squared, I'm just going to make it simple for myself and make it sine times sine. The sines cancel out, the cosines cancel out, and what I'm left with is 1 over sine. So we have 1 over sine, which is actually equal to cosecant of x. Now number 9 is one that I have covered before, but let's go ahead and go through it again. What you're going to want to do is turn everything into terms of sine and cosine, and then go ahead and distribute. So secant is actually 1 over cosine, and we're distributing that into sine, so we're going to multiply it times sine over 1. And we're also going to distribute that to cosine, so we're also doing plus 1 over cosine, that's my secant, times cosine over 1. This 1 over cosine times sine over 1 actually equals tangent of x, plus these two cosines cancel out 1. And so this would be your answer. Now number 10 is perhaps the trickiest one out of all of these, but nonetheless it is one that we went over. So you're trying to get to secant, and when you're trying to verify an identity, or when you're trying to prove an identity, you want to go ahead and start with the most complicated side first. So that side would end up being this side. Obviously, this is only one trigonometric function. And you are going to, first of all, turn everything into terms of sine and cosine, and then see if you can't simplify anything. So cosine will remain as cosine of x for now. We're going to be adding it to sine times sine over cosine. What we end up with is cosine of x plus sine squared over cosine. To add these two guys together, we must put this over 1, and we need to have the same denominator. So I'm going to multiply cosine of x over 1 by cosine of x over cosine of x. This gives me cosine squared of x over cosine plus sine squared of x over cosine, which gives me cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x over cosine, which is equal to 1 over cosine, which is equal to secant of x. And so, look at that. It's verified. Remember, cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x, if we go back to this over here, is our Pythagorean identity. I hope this helped, ladies and gentlemen. Good luck on your test. Let me know if you have any questions.